Thank you for being with us tonight. It is a great honor for me to participate in this initiative. It is a good opportunity to learn from the experts and also to share your views, your ideas, and also building a strong network with people that also have been working in similar fields, and they also have very good experience and a good practice to share. My part of this conversation and training, it's talking about the current trends, the challenges, the opportunities in terms of foreign aid and global fundraising, and how you can be successful in navigating in the troubled waters that we have right now in terms of foreign aid, in terms of how the countries behave. I have been doing this for several years. I have been working with numerous organizations in different regions. I work in Mali. I work it also in with the support from Taiwan, Foundation for Democracy. I have been working with democracy networks in different countries. I was part of Freedom House. I also have been teaching a nonprofit management in several universities, including Columbia or including Johns Hopkins University, and also a global policy at Northeastern University. Worked with Freedom House many years, and I have been working with numerous organizations, contractors, have been providing tools in terms of fundraising to numerous organizations and numerous leaders. Have been participating also in global networks like the World Movement for Democracy, the Community of Democracies, and I have several things that I want to share with you tonight, and looking for the best way that we can learn from the best practice and from some of the things that are going on and how to take advantage of the current environment. The current environment is very complex. It's very competitive. COVID-19 created some kind of vacuum in the space. There have been changes in terms of the structure of foreign aid, new priorities, and part of the money has been going to deal with COVID-19, to deal with the health sector, so less money to other sectors. And as you can see, that there's still some interest in some countries to provide foreign aid in different areas, in development assistance, education, human rights, democracy. Still, the major actor remains the U.S. The U.S. is the major actor in terms of supporting numerous countries worldwide, supporting numerous initiatives. But as we can see, as a percentage of a gross national income for the U.S., it's a 0.17%. So we compare with Syria, that is a smaller country, that is 1% of the equivalent of the gross national income. Imagine if the U.S. fulfill the goal from the United Nations to get into the 0.7%. We have also a major engagement from Germany, from the UK, from different countries around the world. They have been participating in terms of foreign aid for many years. It is a moment of reviewing the role of the local organization, the grassroots organization. It is the time also to build strong networks, to also to bring innovation into the sector. In this competitive environment, there are less opportunities for the traditional views and more opportunities for expanding the ideas in different countries, in the communities, and at the regional level. It is a very competitive environment. It's a time in which all the traditional approaches maybe are not up to date, and that you need to find different ways to engage with your donors, looking for different opportunities. And of course, the post-COVID world, we're still facing the challenge from COVID, the investment in health, the investment in vaccination, the terrible sequels from the COVID-19 destruction in some of the communities, the switch and how the country needs to prioritize health over other priorities in some countries, including education, including food security, and how also the community has been focusing more in COVID than in other areas. We are living also in an autocratic wave. Several, we have been, probably it's the pendulum that has been moving again, and we are moving from more democratic approaches to more autocratic approaches in many countries and many regions. In my region, in particular Latin America, you can see how the country has been changing and becoming more and more authoritarian. The reduction or the elimination of some of the fundamental factors for democracy, including rule of law. It has been a moment of a weak leadership, and that has an impact in terms of the work of several leaders and several organizations and several leaders like you. There's also a new moment for the U.S. as we can see, we saw in the previous chart, and as we can evaluate in terms of the U.S. engagement, the U.S. is still a relevant actor in terms of foreign aid, in terms of the work of the nonprofit sector and NGOs in different countries in the world. The new administration, the Biden agenda, is more collective approaches. It's focused right now in corruption and attending corruption worldwide. In the meetings that I have been participating in related to the new agenda, new policies, more relating to corruption, attacking corruption as one of the major evil behind poverty, behind corruption, behind the lack of rule of law, and the violation of human rights. So it's a full initiative. Even I'm part of the President Summit, Democracy Summit, and part of the Democracy Summit is going to be corruption. There's a good opportunity too with the relocation of the Afghanistan funds, how those funds, trillions of dollars invested or wasted in Afghanistan. Now they're gonna probably, the administration will prioritize the investment in terms of building new partnership in other countries, in other regions. We had this vacuum for many years in which the cooperation from the U.S. ended in few countries, and Afghanistan being one of the major recipients of foreign aid, trillions of dollars to build institutions, to help with sanitation, to help with building roads, education in Afghanistan. This was a major investment, and of course, everything ended in waste time and investment because of the lack of long-term planning. But that's another story. But there's going to be a next chapter in terms of foreign aid for the U.S. and probably there are going to be more opportunities, and the U.S. Progressively will return to what was 20 years ago in terms of the engagement of the U.S. with other countries in a more active role. The U.S.-Asia agenda, of course, will continue to be a fight against the major evil that is China for the U.S. and building better connections, building better partnership, and helping for the U.S. to develop its economic and security interests in the region, more support to Taiwan, more support to other countries to improve their relationship and partnership with the U.S., helping also with some areas about climate change, and of course The closing democratic space continues to be a priority. It's going to be a priority for USA in fighting against authoritarian and the religious also intolerance. There are some areas they're going to continue. They're going to increase the support from the US. So it's a good opportunity to engage. It's a good opportunity to network. It's a good opportunity to bring innovation, because I believe there's going to be more funds available to counterbalance the influence of China in not only in Asia, also in other regions of the world. Other major partner for your work, of course, is the EU, the European Union. And of course, the issue of China also is a priority for the foreign policy, but also for the cooperation in terms of the European Union. I love to work with the European Union. They're a good partner, solid in terms of the support, and it's a competitive process. The application process is very competitive, but it is a good donor. The main areas of work of the European Union is human rights, education, rule of law, energy, environment, trade, and it's not as active as the U.S., but it's less capricious as the U.S. A major problem that we face in terms of our work, the work of different organizations, the work of different leaders, the funds they're devoted to support education, health, building roads, improving institutions, development as a way, or democracy and human rights, is the lack of planning, lack of long-term approaches. It's just pure short-term approaches. If we evaluate why countries continue in the same path of destruction, like Somalia, like Haiti, like Mali, it's short-term approaches. It's always investing in those countries. Like what happened in Afghanistan. It's just short-term approaches, no accountability, no real planning behind the investment. It's top-down approaches, and no major community involvement in the activities or in the planning. And that has been created a major problem, and that the lack of attention to the endemic problems. It's impossible to fix endemic problem with short-term approaches. So a major change, and that has been my fight all the times at Congress, at the Department of State, or when I talk with the European Union, when I talk with different partners, with the Canadians, is that we need to move from short-term projects to long-term approaches to face the endemic problems of the region. Of course, there are multiple funds out of. I always recommend to keep an eye in the U.S. because it's the major source of funding, of course. But there are other ways of maintaining your activities, your organization, looking for projects or looking for money for your projects. And of course, you have different U.S. sources all the time. As a way to look for support. You have different donors. You have the National Endowment for Democracy. You have the Inter-American Foundation. You have a Ford Foundation. You have different U.S. source of funding. Different direct U.S. government funding. That is not the common approach, because they prefer to work with U.S. organizations and U.S. contractors. There are opportunities, of course, but it's hard to apply and to win and the kind of operation that you need to manage USD funds directly. It's a different levels in terms of procurement, in terms of the contracts, in terms of the follow-up. But there are different opportunities there. There's international sources, not depending of the U.S. Some governments north-south, France, the Sweden's, Canada, providing funds directly. I worked years ago with CIRA, Canada, and in the work with Latin America and with other regions, and providing some advice and some support. And they had a pretty decent portfolio, even though they had a small amount of money to distribute. They try to expand the work and create bilateral agreements and support. And also there are some countries like they have been working with other countries like Japan, providing some foreign aid and support to other countries, and small organizations too. I worked with the Japan government once, and different projects, and it's probably $50,000, $60,000. So it's an opportunity for organization, and they support with equipment and training and other areas. You have also a second level approaches. So it's organizations that work with the funds from a government, foundations, nonprofit, contractors that work with government funds. It's up for me. It's a problem because of the amount of money that goes for them, and the toll that it takes in terms of the percentage of their money that goes to these organizations in terms of their operations, their costs of NICRA or the indirect. So if I always criticize that and prefer to the approach that going directly to in-country support and more support to the South. But that's part of the equation. The South-South approaches countries that improve their economies, and that decided to move on and support other countries over their neighbor countries to help those neighbor countries to advance. Of course, you have other blocks like the European Union that not only you can receive money directly from the European Union, but also from the individual countries. And in some countries, you can go beyond that and also have some foundations that receive money from the federal government and also contribute with development, human rights, and other areas. And also you have some local governments, like in Spain, that you have the autonomías in Spain, the autonomic government, that they also provide support for funding. Also, you have a new engagement from China. China is not moving to the same direction like the US or some European countries, creating a foreign aid portfolio as a portfolio. China has been more capricious in terms of the investment, going directly in bilateral agreements with some countries, and normally it's government to government. It's not an approach that involves the civil society, that involve the nonprofit. But China internally has been moving to more corporate responsibility approaches, improving the nonprofit laws, improving the work of non-political organizations in China, and open the philanthropy in China. So probably that's going to have an impact in the future, also in the behavior from China and the countries that China operates, also engaging in a different approach in those countries. Money from multilaterals like the World Bank, from the UN system, sometimes they open some opportunities for civil society to participate, to work with some civil society, or create some opportunities to work with government and civil society. Regional banks and Inter-American Development Bank, the African Bank. There are different regional banks. They also do some work in terms of engaging in multi-sectoral approaches and supporting a part of the portfolio goes directly to supporting development in non-profit NGOs in some countries. And of course, the business, the philanthropist that goes to those countries. My concern with this is they are so capricious, and they have their own agendas, and the agenda sometimes is not in line with the needs of the communities, more their priorities and their views. But that's a good way to receive also funds from the Gates Foundation and other foundations that operate. the foundations and nonprofit, the Ford Foundation, the Atlas Foundation. There are several nonprofits and foundations that also contribute with foreign aid. It's a good effort to approaching them and engaging with them by different way. And we can organize a workshop in terms of how to put together a proposal, how to deal with the storytelling, how to find the ways to get into the right people, the right moment at the right place. And that needs to be an art. It's that the art and science of fundraising. It's what I call in my book and in my classes, is that you need to have your storytelling in line, but also your strategy behind your fundraising. In-country sources, the influencers also, I forgot about the influencers. Influencers also can develop campaigns supporting your work, and that connected with any online platform to receive funds as soon as you get the influencer support. Probably it's a good opportunity also to get support for whatever you have in mind. In-country sources, you need to evaluate the business and other sources in your country. And of course, there's a work that the people tend to ignore. There is the in-kind and the voluntary support. That's very important in this sector. The faith-based is an important sector, and more with major foundations and nonprofit from different congregations that operate in multiple countries. So it's a good source of funding. It's a good source of support in our sector. And of course, crowdfunding, the campaigns, and that's related also with the influencers. You create a crowdfund and you have a major influencer behind you supporting your work. Probably there's going to be a successful approach and a different approach. And there has been a movement to create more and more social bonds in which the investment from the governments, the private sector, and also the work from the nonprofit, from the NGO, creates an opportunity for people who want to invest in the climate change, in the environment, in social issues, to get some return from the investment, and also create some social entrepreneurship and improving the work in our sector and creating more opportunities for more innovators to creating the sector and not needing to move to the for-profit sector. In terms of the foreign aid and how we need to refocus, rewire the foreign aid, how we need to change the approach in terms of foreign aid, we need to think about how we can be more effective in terms of foreign aid. The first thing that I always recommend in terms of foreign aid is transparency. And it looks like simple, it looks like obvious, but it's not like that. In several projects that I have been working, transparency is not the priority. Sometimes for the organizations, sometimes for the contractors, and also there are some elements that maybe they are legal, but they are immoral. And that's when I find a contradiction in terms of the work that we have to take into account in how we need to work in some communities in need. So it's the end of the rent seeking. I believe that there's a sector that has been taking advantage of the foreign aid, taking advantage of the suffering from the communities, taking advantage of the international cooperation to maintain the way of living. And not only in some poor countries or not only international organizations, also contractors and some nonprofits, some NGOs that depend of the money from that they depend the money of a U.S. government or other governments to survive, or from the European Union. So they create a massive amount of money for them to manage. They require that massive amount of money to manage any project. And because of compliance and other requirements in the US, normally the US prefer to operate with major NGOs, major nonprofit like National Endowment for Democracy, like International Republican Institute, like NDI, like Freedom House. these major NGOs or nonprofit are second level operations. It's receive the money from the U.S. government, and then they allocate that money into the organizations in country. But for that, there is a toll there. There is a percentage of the money that is in their hands, and sometimes it's from 25% to 55, 60%, 70% of the money ends in the hands of this organization. And it's worth also when you have the contractors behind that the US administration or the European Union is less with the European Union because there is a cap in terms of what they can charge in terms of indirect, a cap of 10% of what the organization can charge. In the US, there is not a cap. The organization can charge from 10% to 80%, 100% in indirect, in overhead. This is so-called in the NICRA. So there's a second problem in terms of this is the short-term approaches. In the consultant-based view. So it's not the community, it's not the people who knows, and they know also about the tradition, they know about the culture, and that has an impact in project implementation. But instead of that, the governments and these entities, the contractors or this nonprofit that operates in the second level, they just ignore that and they just use their best knowledge that they have. But sometimes those approaches are wrong. Efficiency. I have a story there that the normal word that the cooperation use is burn the money, the burning rate. So the burning rate is the amount of money that you are using, or the money that you spend in the implementation process. And they measure how much money, and not the impact. They measure how much you invest, and you end in trouble when you don't have enough money spent, so enough money burned. So in one project, I was very efficient in terms of the way that we implemented. We found local partners, we found other donors, so we were implementing saving money. And you cannot use that word in this sector. Saving money is a bad word for governments, it's a bad word for contractors, because they need to burn the money to get the percentage of NICRA, of indirect, and their cost allocation. So that's a major problem. The efficiency is not there, and it's not something that we have in this sector right now. Of course, the change from a private public approaches. For many years, we have been hearing about public-private approaches, but instead of that, we need to move ahead and talk about government, private sector, multilateral, and civil society. So it is not the business sector, the private sector, the philanthropists that they're going to solve the problems, the endemic problems of the community. It's not only the governments. The government cannot solve this process. The multilaterals, they are not for that. And the community alone cannot solve this problem. So you need to integrate all the sectors and working together to find long-term solutions in not only short-term fixes. Accountability is a priority at the end of the burning the budget. Metrics, there is the storytelling, the metrics. We need to change the way of operating and having some results and measure some results, having the right key performance indicators. And of course, those key performance indicators need to measure the impact, not the number of people who participate in the event, not the number of activities that you organize. Is about the impact in the community. What are you changing with this project? That's what you need to measure. And of course, planning needs to be a major component. We improvise all the time. So we need to have scenario analysis, planning, and the short-term approaches, and begins to see the result in long-term, and not the rush about having a project and having to deliver to the donor. And in that moment, we lost credibility. We become so addicted to cooperation, to foreign aid, that we lost track of the priority that is our beneficiaries, and we lost track of the mission of our organization. Innovation and entrepreneurship is a priority. It needs to be the change in the sector. And the innovation move from the nonprofit sector to the business sector, because there's the money and the capabilities, and the nonprofit sector that used to be the innovator has been losing that. And you need to begin to think about innovation, how to bring that, how to use innovation lab, how to bring changes into the community, trying those changes, improving the conditions in the community, helping people to develop their initiatives. They know about the community and how to improve whatever situation is going on. And of course, new approaches, changes from the bottom to the top, changing the way the foreign aid and the cooperation works, international cooperation works, begin to trust in some of the community, begin to trust in local movements, the feminization, the bringing the woman in charge. There are several approaches that we need to do to change this foreign aid and cooperation world that is not working anymore. There's no working. That's something, and having those tools in hand will make any leader capable of being on the top of the game. And being on the top of the game means that more funding, more capability to operate, and better trust in terms of the donors. I believe that the situation is changing. I have been participating in numerous meetings. People in the community has been claiming change for changes. There are more and more people pointing the finger to the traditional approach and the rent seeking that is in this sector, and the inefficiency of the sector, and how even though the U.S. only invests 0.1% in foreign aid, and of course people believe that is more. That's 0.1%. That money is not allocated in a way that it's able to produce change. And we can see that from several USA missions in several countries that for 50 years work in that specific countries and no change at all. From the battlefield, I hope that we're going to have more opportunities to expand this conversation, to talk more about the strategies, the tools, and how to get there, how to get the best strategies to approach the donors, how to work with the bureaucracy from the European Union. I work it with projects from the European Union, and I work it for the European Union for a couple of years. So I know how the bureaucracy works, and it's not easy. It's not impossible, but it's not easy. How to navigate also USA or the Department of State, how to navigate specific foundations. There are some clues that you can use. From the battlefield, having been in this sector for 30 plus years and teaching about this, working and managing projects in different countries, dealing with donors, dealing with networks. The first thing is changing the view that some organizations and some leaders create, that they are recipients of funding. They are recipients, and because you are a recipient, you have to behave like a recipient. You're not a recipient, you are a partner. You are a partner in development. So you are a partner of that organization. And I repeat that all the time. When I talk with my donors, when I talk even with the governments, I always mention we are partners. We are partners in the activities. We work together. I keep my donors informed. I have the WhatsApp of the people that work at USA or DRL or the European Union. So my AOR, I maintain contact directly with the AOR, inform the AOR, because for me, they are my partner. Even in grants, remember, you have different ways, different structures in terms of funding. You have the grants that is giving you the money to the organization for you to do the activities. The cooperative agreement that is more engaged from the government. This is in the US, of course, more engaged from the governments in terms of the implementation process in more hands-on. And the contracts that is the organization is providing a service to the government and implementing in the name of the government. So there are different ways to participate. But even with the grants, I maintain a cooperation and information with the donor, because it's my partner, and it's the way that I consolidate And I also have the opportunity of pitching new ideas. It's not only about the implementation process, it's about pitching other ideas to them. And because we have that connection, I have the possibility of bringing some new ideas in regular conversations when I'm reporting back to them. And also, we need to transform the humanitarian aid to investment for a change. So it is at the end of this business of humanitarian aid. Humanitarian aid just provide more harm than good in several countries because create dependency. And instead of providing long-term changes, it's just providing short-term patches, some short-term fixes that not it tends not to improve the situation in countries. So it's how to invest this aid in something that's going to be productive in the long term, and end the suffering in the long term. So, and create institutions and create opportunities, create more jobs, taking the innovation from the communities and helping them to grow. My advice also, it's a smart fundraising. So it's using systems, it's using technologies, and link that to your priorities. So you need to use the technology, you need to use social media, you need to look for donors approach, but also you need to find ways to be more effective with all the technological changes that you have. And that goes also for the organization, how to be more effective in terms of implementing, how to use the system, and how to be more effective in terms of the use of the resources. My advice is also governance and improving the organization. There is a tendency sometimes that you get some money from foreign aid, you get some money from your donor, and you tend to manage that, and you have the leader of the organization is the one to find the money and doesn't care about the structure of the organization. The organization process doesn't have a board, doesn't have the right structure, and in the future, that's going to be a major requirement. Not only in the US, it has been improving the governance. At the international level, it will be a major factor. And having a strong board of people committed to the organization and to the work that you have been doing, it's a positive step to more organized work, but also more people that care for the organization. One of the differences during COVID time for some organizations, nonprofits in the US and in other countries, was the role of the board, how the board found contacts, talk with the donors, talk with the banks, talk with different sectors to maintain the operation of the organization. And the boards became an active partner for the survival of several organizations. So having a board, having a more governance, it's a priority. And not in all the countries that is the case. And more with authoritarian countries in which, of course, being member of some board, it's a problem. And also there's the time constraint, but my advice is that governance is important. Planning, scenario analysis, scenarios, a strategy is turning organization from improvising and looking for the money in organizations that actually develop a plan and know what they are doing. And having that in hand helps also to bring change because you create an opportunity for the organization. Changing the view from donors to your team workers. So 365 days per year, engagement, advocacy, storytelling, bringing changes. What I do normally is sometimes I don't even wait for the call for proposal. I begin to pitch before that some ideas, some innovative ideas. For what the time comes that the donor publish the call for proposals, I already won. So I won. So because I already saw my ideas, I also sometimes introduce something. In the US, we call this unsolicited. So I put together a concept, some ideas, and pitch that to the donor. And sometimes I have been successful in terms of the idea. They like the innovation, they like the process, they like the communication with the community, having my partnership on the ground with several networks, with several organizations, have been helping me also to be successful. So because the donor knows that I know the people, that I work with them directly, that I care for them. I also, in the organization that I support right now, I ask them to maintain the indirect, the NICRA in 10% because it's the way also to win, because you are showing that you are investing. So the cost of operation is 10 plus 8, 7% in other costs. So they reinvest the money, 80% of the money directly in country. It's impossible to lose any call for proposal. So it's not innovation plus having accountability and having also the right investment in the community is a major success in terms of implementing a project and winning. Always is part of that. Storytelling, showing what you have been doing. That's why metrics, it's a fundamental part of your operations. Not having the metrics means that your system probably are not in place, that you cannot have efficiency, and also you don't have anything to share with your donors. Having that metrics, having that storytelling, having the opportunity to share the stories, it's a good thing, and it's something that is very positive. The partnership, the network, the collaboration, what you have right now, build on that. Create those networks, create collaboration, create partnership, and expand your horizon, creating something that is bigger than a small organization working in the community. So create this network and participate in this network, and also have opportunity to get to different donors. And changing the narrative. It is changing the implementing goals. That's what is in your project, what is the ambition and activities, to real impact. What are you changing in the community? How you measure that change, and having clear image and how you're gonna transform, and how the mission of your organization, your mission is gonna have an impact in your community. So let's open to more discussion, more conversation. I'm here for you in this process, and again, thank you for the invitation.